Well, today's video is going to address one of the most common and understandable questions that people ask when they meet with an estate planning attorney, right? You come in, you know you need a will, but then all of a sudden your attorney's talking about powers of attorney, medical documents, trust, beneficiary designations, and much more. Is it overkill? Are they trying to upsell you? Well, we're going to ask Nick today, and he's going to be transparent with that process. We'll start now. Welcome in. This is Complete Estate Planning. I'd like to have you on the channel once more. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. We appreciate the support on YouTube, and thanks for listening wherever you are. And today, we got a good one, Nick. Everybody just assumes the attorney's, out to get you in a lot of cases, and maybe that's what the hesitancy is to work with some. But today's question, and one we're addressing, is pretty common, right? When they come in asking for a will, and all of a sudden you start talking about other stuff, it actually is necessary, isn't it?
Right. And look, I think it's good to acknowledge the elephant in the room when someone says, I need this. And then the lawyer says, no, you don't. You need that and five other things. And by the way, it's more complicated. It's more time. It's more money. And then the person says, wow, you're just trying to upsell me. You're just trying to take me for a ride. What is all of this? I didn't ask about all of that. But all lawyer stereotypes aside, because they mostly exist for, because there's some truth to them, right? Stereotypes just don't magically come for no reason. I think it's important, and a good attorney should at least make you aware of the other pieces of this, of what I would consider an estate plan. I would say a will, misconception, because a lot of people know I need to get my will done, right? That's something that, even though people don't do it often enough, they know that is on the checklist of life, before they pass away. But what is not commonly put on the checklist is all the other items that need to go with it. Some things, some documents that I would consider, part of the full estate plan. The will is really one piece of the puzzle. It's not the one and only item, and it doesn't stand alone. Okay. So again, we've talked about all this, the specific documents and what a complete estate plan entails and what it does. But I still think we should address this because what people put on their to-do list is, I need to get my will done this year. And that's not a complete list, unfortunately.
Yeah. So look, today's video is going to help you better understand that process, see the bigger picture, explain why these documents and these conversations are so important to have, and why, there's probably likely that you need much more than that will. But let's just start there then, Nick. Why do people begin kind of the process just thinking, okay, I just need a will? Why do they start there typically?
Well, look, that's the adult responsible thing to do. You need to get your will done. Right. It's the most common. And as far as estate planning documents, it's the one that most people are familiar with. That is the one that shows up on the TV shows, in the movies, or in family conversations. And, they don't have a lot of drama on the TV show about the power of attorney who's making sure your mortgage gets paid. That's not good TV. But when you die, the will leaving money to, the secret son that no one knew about, that's TV worthy, right? So we're gonna talk about that. So that's the one that is most common, and that is probably the document that almost everyone, even if they haven't done it, my guess has been most people walking around the street, if you walked up to them and said, do you know what a will is? They could tell you at least
Right.
what it does, right? Now, if you ask them, what else do you need? They would say, I need a will, where really what people should be walking around, or what the adult to-do list should be, if I were to modify or update that, it should be, I need an estate plan. It shouldn't just be, I need to do a will.
All right. Well, before we talk about the full estate plan, let's actually talk about what the will does and doesn't do, because you first need to kind of understand that before you understand how these other pieces fit together.
Yeah. So the will does a couple things. It will say who receives your inheritance when you pass away, and it's administered through probate court. So it would be the will is limited to your assets that will also fall under the purview of the probate process when you pass away. And I know we've talked on this show about co-ownership, beneficiary designations, trust, other ways to dodge probate. I'm not going to go into all the details there, but the will says when I pass away, here is what the inheritance looks like for my probate assets. And you also appoint someone to be in charge of carrying out your inheritance wishes. That term's called the executor. Most people have probably heard about that. And if you have minor children, the will is also where you will nominate the guardians, so who you want to become the substitute parents if you pass away and the children are still underage. So those are the job duties, if you will, the capabilities of a will. And it doesn't avoid probate. It actually has to go through probate to be administered. It's basically the instruction manual for the probate judge. And it doesn't manage assets that do not go through the probate process, like I said. And obviously, Ben, if you're sitting there talking about what it does, what it doesn't do is it doesn't do you a darn bit of good while you're still alive. If you're sick, if you're incapacitated, if you need someone to help, because to use a Monty Python phrase, Ben, I don't know if you're a Monty Python scholar or not, or did you see the Holy Grail? At least I'm assuming
Seen it, yeah.
Everyone's seen that. Yeah. So when we talk about the scene where he says, "I'm not dead yet," if you're not dead yet, the will doesn't do you any good because it only says, here's how we divide up your stuff once you're dead, and here's who's in charge of all of it. So knowing what the will does and what it doesn't do, its limited capabilities, it has, like one or two jobs. Ben, obviously that, asks the question of, well, what about all the other stuff I might need help with, which is where I say, here's why a will is not the only thing. It is part of an estate plan, but it is not the full estate plan encompassing all in one document.
And that's your job. I mean, it might seem obvious, but you're an estate planning attorney. So, when you have someone in there to meet with you and they say, okay, I need a will, there's a reason why you're talking through all these different things, right? There's reasons behind all these different conversations we're about to get into, well, kind of one by one, but that's your job. And I think people understand that, but I think it's important to kind of point that out that, you are looking out for their best interests when you initiate these conversations.
Right. And I have a fiduciary responsibility. I am by law required, to look out for your best interests. So it is my job to say, this is not the only item on the to-do list here. There are other things that also need to be done by you or need to be done for you. And look, I tell people, I get it. I say, you probably came in here thinking I need to get my will done. And now the lawyer is stereotypically saying you need more than that. And the process is more, and the cost is more, and the time is more because and all of a sudden you want to do all these different things. And I just wanted to come in for a will. This guy's complicating things more than he needs to, taking me for a ride and upselling me. Look, there are stereotypes about lawyers for a reason. Again, I'm not going to discount the fact that exists. But, at the same time, it is my job ethically. And so I don't necessarily think your attorney, based on this question, they're not necessarily trying to take you for a ride. They are legally required to, Ben, like you said, at least look out and fully assess the situation and say, the will is not the only thing you need. There are other items that you need as well. And it is actually their ethical responsibility to do so. So again, be aware of that. The attorney's not automatically trying to screw you over. So just have an open mind when you talk to the attorney. They may not be a scumbag just because they are going over items that were not initially on your grocery list, for lack of a better term.
Well, let's take you inside some of these then, Nick, for anybody that's watching. Okay, what exactly are we talking about here? Let's start with the healthcare power of attorney. I mean, obviously one that that is important, kind of right off the bat. But explain why you're having this conversation and why you would need this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is getting back to, I know we've talked about all the components of a complete estate plan before. So for those of you who have listened to that episode, a lot of this will sound familiar. Also, I want to point out for the medical directives, different states have different names for them. So the name might not be the same depending on where you're listening. But the healthcare power of attorney, that is a document that authorizes someone to make medical decisions for you and your care if you are not able to make medical decisions for yourself. Okay, so if I were sick, if I had a stroke, and the doctor said, well, I could try this surgery. It's risky. It may work. It may make things worse. And if I am not mentally able to have that conversation and make that decision for myself, I need a power of attorney that allows someone else to speak for me and say, I am Nick's power of attorney. I am making this decision for him. And, the living will, which is the other medical directive. And again, some states call this healthcare proxies, healthcare surrogates, advanced medical directives. So you may hear a number of different phrases. But the other piece of this, the living will and the healthcare power of attorney, the goals we need to accomplish are the same. One, like I just said, appointing someone to make medical decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. And two, will be stating your own wishes regarding end of life scenarios as far as artificial life support, organ donation, that sort of thing. Again, some states have different names for them. Some states have two documents. Some states just have one, and it's all combined nice in one neat little package. But you need your medical directives, which authorize someone to make decisions for you, and then you stating your affirmative wishes regarding your medical care. And then to piggyback off that, the third medical directive, a little different, and this is federal law, so it should be the same throughout all the states, unlike the other medical directives, but a HIPAA authorization. So that's HIPAA laws, federal law, it's medical privacy. And in general, Ben, it is good that your medical information is confidential, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Let me be clear. But that means it's confidential from everybody. And think of it like a permission slip that allows the doctors to talk to your spouse, the doctors to talk to your kids, the doctors to talk to whoever you pick as medical decision makers. So think of it like a permission slip that authorizes them to communicate, with approved people and share information about you, whether it's the family wanting to know how you're doing, or if you have other people who are responsible for making decisions for you. If you're my medical power of attorney, and you call the hospital because you heard I got in a car crash, and they say, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not allowed to tell you his condition. That makes it pretty tough for you to do your job, right, Ben?
Yeah.
That's almost, I would say it's impossible. So that's the third component of it. Again, that one's federal law, unlike the other ones. So it's going to be a HIPAA authorization regardless of the state, where, for the healthcare power of attorney living will, every state's different. It may be different names for those, but that is the same. Those are all of the things that need to be addressed and checked off the to-do list to take care of all of your needs regarding your medical care.
If anybody's listened to the show, they know that there are different power of attorneys too, right? So you talked about the health side, but there's also the financial power of attorneys. What does that accomplish?
Right. So that's the other power of attorney. It's not a medical directive, but it is authorizing someone to make non-medical decisions for you, financial or legal decisions. So a good example of that would be getting the bills paid, signing checks, filing taxes, going to the bank, signing contracts, canceling spectrum, changing your the login and password on the Verizon account. So this allows someone, because in the same situation when you're unable to manage things for yourself, obviously we get the medical decisions made, but we also need someone to handle, the legal or financial affairs for you. So same concept, that also needs to be taken care of, but it's not one of the medical documents. It's, it's the financial or legal side of it. So again, also, obviously it's very necessary. And all of these are items for incapacity, if you will, because the will's not going to help with any of this while you're alive, Ben. The will just sits there and says, well, once you pass away, I can step in and get to work, but obviously it does you no good during your lifetime.
So when then do you start talking about the trust planning? When does that conversation come into play? Because that's another piece of this.
So good question. So, and again, obviously, I'm not going to rehash everything about trust because we've talked about that extensively on this show. But I have had times where a trust is more appropriate to manage the inheritance than a simple will. And again, not always, but your attorney, if they're doing a good job, not only should they be making you aware of all these other pieces of the puzzle that you need, to kind of make the full estate plan. In addition to that, they should be digging a little deeper and learning more about your situation, what you own, who you want it to go to, um, the best ways to get it there, what we can trust, any guardrails or restrictions. And they may determine that a last will and testament can accomplish that. But they also may determine that a last will of testament cannot properly accomplish the inheritance the way you want. And then we would do a trust instead. So that can avoid trust. Again, they can avoid probate. They can protect assets, not only from probate, but from issues with the beneficiaries to where we can't just drop a lot of money in their lap if they're not old enough, if they're not great with money, if they have medical needs, if they have creditors, if they're disabled or handicapped, if they have a spending problem or a gambling addiction, that sort of thing. So in addition to the probate avoidance, a trust allows you to customize the inheritance to where we can handle it with care after you're gone. So the attorney, again, it may not be an upsell. They may not be taking you for a ride. They may, and then look, they should be able to explain this to you. So I wouldn't just take whatever anyone says at face value and kind of shrug and go on. I like to talk to my clients and say, I think this is a better option for you. Here's why, because we want to do this, this, and this. And if we did it with a will, here's how it would go. Or I couldn't do it at all. If we set up a trust, I unlock these new features, if you will. Okay, so I can do this, this, and this, and it comes standard. Like think of it like, well, if you're car shopping, Ben, I don't know the last time you went to, buy a new car, but I tell people if you need third row seating, and you came in and said, I need a Toyota Camry, and then you tell me you need third row seating because you have 5 kids, it would be dishonest of me if I said, yep, here's the Camry. The right answer is to say, the Camry's not going to do what you need it to do unless you put a bunch of the kids in the trunk, or tie them to the roof rack, so to speak. That's where we maybe need to look at the SUV or the minivan. So a good attorney should understand your situation first before they tell you what you need. So that's a red flag to look out for. But once they understand, they should be able to say, here's what you need, here's what you don't need, and here's why that is. And it's not necessarily an upsell. It could be, a situation like that where you came in thinking you needed one thing, but that's not the right tool, or that tool can't do things the way you want them to be done. Okay, so have an open mind to it, but also feel free to ask the question. I love when my clients ask me the question. They say, Nick, I know you're telling me this. Why? Why is that the case? What are the limitations if I don't do it this way? More than happy to explain. And I think a good attorney should be able to explain it. But yeah, so we look into all of that. And then on top of that, and this kind of falls under the purview of the trust versus the will discussion. But, we need to look at, coordinating the accounts with the trust or with the inheritance plan. They should be talking to you about how beneficiaries should be set up, co-ownership, transfer on death. They should also be talking about what we want to do with each account and how it gets there. So for real estate, who owns it? Do we need new deeds? Are there transfer options? What about retirement accounts? How do they get where they're supposed to go? What about the cars, the bank accounts? Are there co-ownership, beneficiary, transfer on death? So, a good attorney should be walking through all of that with you just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And again, that's a thorough attorney who's experienced and knows what they're talking about and knows what to look out for, as opposed to, just complicating the simple and trying to take you for a ride. I think, Ben, when you go to the doctor's office, if you say your ear hurts, they're still weighing you, measuring your height, blood pressure, the popsicle stick in your mouth, and you don't sit there and say the doctor's taking you for a ride. You're appreciative that the doctor's checking everything, just to make sure. And that's the way I would look at it, there. So again, go in with an open mind. I understand the stereotypes for lawyers exist, but hopefully this helps people understand what a good attorney's doing, what they're looking out for, and why there may be more to it than just the I need to get my will done.
Gotcha. What else then, Nick, is on this list? What other things would pop up during this process?
Well, I would say that's a pretty good list of it. But the what you need to do is you may need a will. Absolutely, that's definitely But I would look at it from, I need to get my estate plan in order. I would modify what is on your to-do list and make sure that the conversation with your attorney is addressing what happens when I'm gone, who gets everything, but also how does that go, what we need to watch out for. And then also, incapacity planning, which I think obviously whether it's a will or a trust, that doesn't do a whole lot for. So they should be looking at, how am I okay and taken care of if something happens to me if I'm still alive? And then after I'm gone, what is the inheritance and everything look at? And then how does all of it get there? So the incapacity planning, the death planning from the inheritance, and then looking at the assets and how everything gets where it's supposed to. And then, all the pieces of the puzzle should fit together, to cover all of your bases. So that's what a good attorney should do. That's how I go about it with my clients. And, that should not automatically, like I said, be a red flag. Actually, if anything, it should be the opposite. It should make you comfortable that you're working with someone who knows what they're doing and is being thorough.
All right, very good. We'll go to CincinnatiEstatePlan.com to learn more. There's also a lot more on that site that can help kind of lay out the process and help you understand the complete estate planning process as well. But again, if you have questions for Nick, leave them in the comments below or reach out directly. We appreciate your replies and love hearing from you here from the show. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that as well. We appreciate those that have done that and hope to keep growing the channel. So that's all we ask from you for this show that we do every week. So we appreciate that as always, Nick, and look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by estate planning? The process can seem complex, but it doesn't have to be. The Rosenbauer Law Office is dedicated to helping you protect what matters most: your family, your assets, and your peace of mind. Nick and the team will guide you through every step of the process, making sure you feel confident and informed along the way. Take the first step toward peace of mind today. Schedule an introductory call by clicking the link in the description of today's show.
This show is for informational purposes only and does not provide any legal advice. Information on this show may not constitute the most up-to-date legal information. Please do not act or refrain from acting based solely on anything you hear on this show. This show does not form any attorney-client relationship with the Rosenbauer Law Office, LLC. Please seek the counsel of a qualified attorney before addressing your own estate planning needs.